I've just completed the quarterly battery recalibration charge on my BYD Seal, and if you own a BYD EV, in fact, not even just BYD, any EV with an LFP battery in it, it should be something you do every 3 months as well. So what is it and why is it important? That's what I'm going to explain today on this episode of Beyond EV, your home for everything BYD. Hi everyone, David here from Beyond EV, and if you own a BYD EV and read the owner's manual, you'll find a section where it tells you to do a battery recalibration charge every 3 months, and it's something that's important to do often to maintain the health of your battery. It's something specific to LFP batteries in particular. If you drive an EV with an NMC battery, it's not something you have to do, but because every BYD vehicle runs LFP batteries, it's something you have to do if you own a BYD vehicle. So what is it and why is it important? Let's dive into it. So a battery recalibration charge is something that is unique to LFP battery operated EVs. It's not something you actually have to do with EVs that use an NMC battery, and that is because there is a fundamental difference between the cells that are used in either an LFP battery EV and an NMC battery EV, and it comes down to the cell voltages. The voltage of a cell, typically going back to NMC cars, which is what sort of kicked everything off here in Australia, an NMC battery cell tends to have a progressive drop-off in voltage the further you go down state of charge. So I'll put a chart up on the screen here just to show it to you. But effectively, when you're starting at 100 and go down to 0%, you will typically see the voltage drop off bit by bit as you go along. So it's quite easy for the car to understand how much charge is left in an NMC battery by just reading the voltage. If the voltage is at a point that is typically 50% of where it would be from full, then you know that the car knows that the battery is currently at 50% state of charge. Typically, an NMC battery operated EV will use the cell voltages to determine the state of charge, and it's quite accurate. And it's used not just in EVs, but in other lithium ion powered battery cells as well in other devices. LFP is different. LFP has a nominal cell voltage as well, but it's not a progressive drop off like you see in NMC. The voltage curve for an LFP battery is considerably flat. In fact, it usually sits at around the 3.3 to 3.6 volt mark for most of the state of charge. And I'll put a chart up on the screen so you can see. It will typically start off quite high at 100%, and then it will drop off significantly down to about 90 to 80%. Then it stays flat, well, relatively flat, down to about 20% where it drops off again in voltage. So when the battery state of charge is in between that 20 and 80% mark, you can't use the voltage reading to determine what the state of charge is, because the battery system is not going to know whether it's at 30% or 70% based on a voltage reading of each cell. So what you need to do in what the battery management system does a calibration test and then effectively estimates where it's going to be from that calibration. And it does this when you do a recalibration charge. So a LFP battery recalibration charge typically requires you to drain the battery down to a state of charge below 10%, and then you must recharge it from 10% back up to 100% in one session. There can't be any breaks. You need to be able to just do it from that point on. So if you are doing a recalibration charge, make sure you pick a time that is convenient for you, because the car is going to be stuck on that charger till it gets back up to 100%. I mean, if you need to go somewhere, you can just unplug it and go. You're not stuck there, but if you want the calibration charge to be done correctly, you need to let it go up to 100%. So what happens here is that when you do this charge, there's two benefits here. One, it gives the battery management system an opportunity to rebalance the cells. Over time, when you're charging and discharging the batteries, you might find that each cell has different voltage levels and different anomalies that just accrue over time if you're not draining it and refilling it linearly all the time. So when you drain every cell down to a state of charge below 10%, it gives the BMS an opportunity to rebalance all the cells and get it nice and flat and even as possible between all the cells. Secondly, it gives the battery management system an opportunity to determine how much charge is needed to get from 10% to 100%, and then it can use that to calculate an estimated SOC when you drain it back down again while driving. So my car has a roughly 80 kilowatt hour LFP blade battery in it. So if I'm discharging it down to 10%, the battery thinks there's only 8 kilowatt hours left in it, and so the time it takes and the amount of charge that is put into the battery at that point is going to be typically around 72 kilowatt hours. So it knows now that when you take away 8 kilowatt hours or something like that, the battery has depleted 10%. That's how it learns how to do that again. And you need to do this every 3 months because batteries degrade. The voltages change. Voltages between the cells differ slightly. So we're not talking major changes here. Like, it's not going to recalibrate it and bang, you're going to get an extra 10% of range. We're talking, 1 or 2 kilometers here or there, if that. But it's important because these marginal differences will add up over time, and it can make a bigger difference, years down the track. So keep doing it every 3 months just ensures that the battery management system knows exactly what's going on with your battery. It allows it to level out all the cells so that they're nice and even in terms of voltage and power output. And it also gives the battery management system an opportunity to relearn how much charge and discharge is needed to fill up and deplete your battery, and therefore give you a more accurate state of charge reading. And I know it's something that's typically criticized about BYD vehicles, and the range reading and things like that are never quite 100%. It's typically down to this. The system cannot really give you an accurate estimate like it could with an NMC battery, where it can just go, yep, the battery's at 3.8 volts. It is this particular state of charge. Whereas on a BYD or any car with an LFP battery, 3.8 volts could mean 80%, it could mean 20%. It can't do that. You need to do a calibration charge so it learns sort of roughly where it's going to be, and it's going to be typically accurate, within 5% here or there. So yeah, that is how you go about doing a LFP battery recalibration charge and why it's important. Now let's take a look at the battery health, because now that I've rebalanced all the cells and the battery management system has relearned exactly how much charge, discharge, how much speed and everything is going on in the battery, I'm going to put my OBD2 sensor back into the car and take a reading and see what the degradation levels are like. So I'm just back in the car and I've got my OBD2 scanner. So if you haven't seen my last video on this, click the link up on the corner where I did my first battery health check, and this is going to be a bit of a comparison between that video and what it is now as well. But underneath here you'll see that plug there, so this will plug into that port and you'll see it light up. Now when it lights up, you then just need to grab your phone and find your scanner app, which for me is this one here, Car Scanner. So that's me to reconnect it. Yep. So now it's reconnected. So now you want to hit dashboard, and you need to reconfigure your dashboard to bring up the types of information that you want to have up. Now I'm going to put a screenshot of this up on the screen so you can see it more clearly. And as you can see now, currently at a SOC of 98%, the exact SOC is 97.7, and it's giving me a current state of health calculation of 98.367. Now I've just had a chance to review the figures from the last state of health check, and it appears the figures are exactly the same. The last reading I had was 98.367 as well. Now, I've only put on an extra 7,000 kilometers since then, and I've only charged it, you know, an extra 10 or so times, 20 or so times. I think there may be an anomaly with that. I wouldn't expect it to be exactly the same. And look, this was directly after a battery recalibration check as well. So this should be as accurate as it could possibly be. So I think take that figure with a grain of salt, because I've pretty much just proven that that calculated figure might not be 100% accurate. I still think it's close enough given the age of the vehicle and how many kilometers I've done. You know, about 1.6% of degradation in 18 months, 30,000 kilometers is, I would say, what's to be expected. But the fact that it hasn't changed at all, even just like a fraction of a decimal, means that there's something up with that. So everything else gives you pretty accurate information. The cell voltages, as you can see here, there's very little differences between the max cell reading and the min cell reading, which means the cells, individual cells in the battery pack, are nice and even. Max cell voltage, you can see it creeps up a little bit, but I think that is the highest reading on this current sort of charge cycle. I don't think it's just the current one at the moment. Cell temperature is nice and even. Now, in times I've charged and the accumulated energy I've put into my BYD seal can be read here, and I'll just do a quick calculation on that. Now, this is something I just want to chat a little bit about as well, because it came up a lot in the comments of my last video with the battery health check, and that was the amount of accumulated charge energy I've put into my seal compared to how many kilometers I had done in it made it appear as if the BYD seal is quite an inefficient car. Now, if you just divided the kilometers by that figure, you would get a efficiency figure of about 30 kilowatt hours per 100 Ks, which is significantly inefficient for an EV of any type. Even if you drive a massive F-150 EV, it's inefficient for that. That is not the case. So one thing that needs to be taken into account is that this calculation here, well, this figure here is total energy in. It is not total energy out from driving. So this is the amount of kilowatt hours that have been charged into the battery. It doesn't take into account so you can't really use this for driving efficiency, because it includes losses that occur along the way during the charging cycle. It also includes the air conditioning and power and lights and all the other auxiliary electronics that also use battery power. And it also doesn't take into account the fact that 3 to 4 times a week, I sit in my car for an hour and a half with the heater on and the screen on, watching my kids play sport or train for sports. And I think that is one of the bigger drains on the battery, which makes this jump up quite a bit. I've got a couple of kids. They play, organized sport. One of them trains 3 times a week and plays a game on the weekend. So for 4 times a week, or at least 3 times a week, I am sitting in the car, particularly in winter, and just sitting on my phone with the climate control on in nice climate controlled comfort. So that accumulates a lot of energy use over time. I've also used the car for V2L and a number of other things. I've charged my phone with it and things like that. All of that stuff is not calculated in the driving efficiency calculations. Now, to give you an idea of what my calculated driving efficiency is, let's take a look at the settings and what the car tells me. So according to this, I've done 30,000 kilometers, and it thinks over the whole course of me driving the car, I am consuming 16.7 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So that is amount of power discharged from the battery for driving. And it doesn't take into account charging losses and things like that coming in from the battery. As you can see now, I'm on about 30,000, so I'm about 7,000 kilometers ahead of my last video that I've done. And look, as you can see here, my average energy consumption from the last 50 kilometers is about 20 kilowatts, because like I said, I've got a bit of a lead foot and I put the foot down quite a bit. So that gives you an idea of what the actual average consumption is for the way I drive my BYD Seal. So there you have it. That is what a battery recalibration charge does and why you should be doing it every 3 months. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Do you recalibrate your battery every 3 months, or do you just let it go? Let me know down in the comments. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're new here, subscribe to Beyond EV for more BYD related videos. I've got plenty more headed your way. That's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.